We're here. We are here. Little housekeeping. If you are looking for coaching, go to bigmoodcoach.com. We are revamping that. Transformational mentorship is available. You hear all my experiences on here, and I want to help others transform their lives the way my life was transformed. If you're listening, subscribe, rate, share. We want to connect with you. If you just listen and you would like to watch on your TV or elsewhere on your mobile device, you can put it up on YouTube. We're available on every platform. So any way you want to listen to us or hear this experience, we're available to you. So today I led a meeting about humility. We're gonna start playing music to like set the tone. And today today was about humility. A lot of what I spoke in a meeting today, and what I talked about was being right-sized. And I know I speak from a place of like high on the mountaintop on this podcast, so I wanted to be humble. And there's no notes. We're going off script. And I'm going to tell my story the natural way, obviously skipping the details that I've already gone through with you guys, but telling some of the stories of what it was like in the mid 2000s. Is that what you would call it? Mid 2000s? What you would call the stories growing up then, some of the stories growing up in the 90s, about my parents and stuff. So I'm just going to be raw. And as I always am, I think I'm always raw. I don't think there's any fronting going on this podcast, but if I'm going to be coaching people, right, I should qualify. If I'm going to be doing this podcast, I should qualify, instead of just having opinions about life, like who the fuck am I to delineate and pontificate and, orate to fucking what's going on in the world without providing some perspective. So let's jump right in. Obviously, I'm from Queens, New York. That's where I was born and raised. Did all my growing up there. Got in all my trouble there. I grew up. Both my parents are successful, but growing up, they weren't successful right away. Obviously, they found success as we got into our teens. Obviously, I talked about the trauma I experienced, but in my life story, I wouldn't consider that trauma part of my life story because I didn't recall that until I was in my 20s. Any of that trauma, that trauma is fairly new. It's like that just happened, So my childhood was super dope. It was dope. We had everything. Never wanted for anything. It was all gravy. But I did feel a level of discontentment in my life. I went to school with predominantly white kids, and I felt already as early. It's interesting. Black people, we have an existential crisis early in life, which I think when you talk about white privilege, that is a privilege in itself, right? Just the idea of like not having to think, for white people, not having to think of who you are at any age. You just live in your life, and I was already thinking about like who I am, why am I different, what is different about me, what kind of person am I, all of that conversation was happening by the time I was in elementary school. Conversations were already being had about race in my household. Eric, you're big and black, the biggest kid in your class people are going to be scared of you. You got to play, you can't play rough. You got to, can't be too loud. People are going to judge you. That was already being discussed with me as a child. So I was already, something in the room was different, and that thing was me all the time. And I felt that. I still feel that today, being in San Diego, where we're only 2.5%, 3% of the population. By we, I mean African Americans. It's just a white world we live in. But I felt that discontentment early. Went to junior high school, continued to feel that discontentment. My parents being intellectuals, I've always sounded this way. I don't know how to describe how I sound, but I've always sounded this way. So I got picked on by like the cool black kids, and I would never be white. And it took me years to understand that despite how culturally involved I was in white culture, I would never be a white kid. I'd just never be. And I would never be black enough. And there's still question that if you don't believe a certain way, if you don't think a certain thing, if you don't say Black Lives Matter, then you may not be black enough. And that's just, we eat our own in the black community. And, the Chris Rock talks about the white people is heavy. Everything is hot, heavy, and sharp, with white people. It's interesting. So junior high school, by the time I was 13, I found a group of kids who were misfits like me, middle class kids, and who skateboarded and smoked weed. And I think I smoked weed for the first time with those kids. And New York City, we have like parks. We would chill in like the park on the handball courts and smoke joints, smoke blunts, drink 40s, and skateboard around town. So I did that, but something was different from me to them is that they could stop. They can go to school. They can do their homework. They can manage life, and I could not. Once I started drinking, that's all I wanted to do. And from 12 to 23, I didn't have a sober week. It wasn't every day at that point, but I didn't have a sober week for those 10, 11 years. So I went into high school. There was, when it comes to sexuality, there was tons of gay experiences as a kid, just doing gay shit with your friends. I think that's a normal part of development, just exploring sexuality as a kid, and then going back to my sexual trauma. That all played a part. I was already sexualized for a number of years before I had this experience. I already knew what porn was. I already knew what masturbation was. I already knew that male on male interaction was some normalized in my life. So there was a lot of gay experience with my friends, experimentation, which I don't feel bad about. I feel like the more guys I speak to in 12-step, the more common this is, like jerking off together. It's just gay shit. You know what I mean? Matt knows what I mean. I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? It's just gay shit that you experience. And it doesn't fuck with me. It's a little embarrassing. Because being hypersexual my whole life, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing that I was that way, But by the time I was in junior high school, I was doing science experiments with my body. I played football. I was fairly good at football, and I was being rewarded for violence. That's something. I played football from like 10 up until I was 17 or 16, and I was being rewarded for violence. I hit hard, and I would bang with my head, and I was cheered, and I was, promoted to captain based off of my ability to be violent. I draw a direct correlation to my violent lifestyle later in life, to just playing a violent sport. But by the time I'm doing these science experiments with my body, with drinking 40s, smoking blunts, eating Valium, eating Percocet, eating Vicodin, doing Robitussin, every drug you can think of, I was doing it in order to alter my state. And then by this time, I truly could not stop. I was fully enthralled in an addiction, and I truly could not stop. By 10th grade, I could pull it out during football season. I could manage I was always trying to manage. You're gonna hear me say manage a lot. I was always trying to, sometimes I still try to manage, but I was trying to manage school. I was trying to, manage football and still figure out a way to drink and use. But eventually drinking and using took precedent. And I got kicked out of my high school when I was 15. And I moved on to a few different high schools after that. And again, drinking took precedent. Quick story. I ended up having to go to summer school when I was 15, and I on my way to summer school, I was at Cardozo High School for summer school, and we had these paper IDs to show us that, like, hey, you can come into the school. And I had a 50 bag of Coke in my pocket, and in front of the security guard, instead of pulling out the paper ID, I pulled out the 50 bag of Coke and showed it to the security guard, and he was just as shocked as I was. I looked down at it and I was like, oh shit. Looked at him, he was like, oh shit. And then I never went back to summer school. Needless to say, I failed. So now I'm a year behind in schoolwork. And before I walked in that day with that 50 bag of Coke, I was already drinking 22s in the park. 22s of Budweiser in the park with DJ. He doesn't go by DJ anymore, so he's anonymous, But yeah, in this time, I bouncing from friend group to friend group because the mental health stuff started coming up. The mental health started coming up in junior high school, and the drug and alcohol use exacerbated. I was just emotionally unstable, and doing genetic testing that I've done over the past couple of years, I'm predisposed to having a hard time managing serotonin and dopamine. So just when people think about mental illness and like, is it real? No, it's tangible. It's tangibly real. And it's exacerbated by substance abuse, and hormones and going through puberty. So I'm having a difficult time maintaining friendships, and almost an impossible time maintaining friendships. So bouncing from friend group to friend group, all with these white kids. And, in high school, I was getting chased out of neighborhoods. No niggers in Whitestone. Jimmy said that. Punched him in the face. I think I hit him with a scooter. Everybody got stopped by the cops that night, but I somehow made it out of the neighborhood. But yeah, chased out of that neighborhood. But guess what? I kept going back because I wanted friends and I wanted to be a part of. The same reason I'm sober today and I hang out with sober people is the same reason I drank and used, and the same reason I do this podcast is because I want to connect with you. Let me let that bitch breathe. So, was dealing with this, the whole time I'm growing up, these white kids from Queens, every third joke was about my blackness. No niggers over for dinner. My mom said, does he even have a father? Because I called my boy on Father's Day, and my family and I had a difficult relationship. I was just very estranged from my family. I didn't feel like I fit in there either. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. So I would want to hang out with my friends, or my quote unquote friends, because these are not my friends, right? These are people who I wanted to be friends with because I wanted to feel a part of. These are not my friends. I don't consider any of them friends to this day. And now that in retrospect, these are not my friends, right? But I would hit them up on like holidays and be like, hey, you guys want to smoke some weed or smoke some blunts? And I hear his mom in the background. Does he even have a father? Yeah, lady, I have a father. He lives with me. Is like, why would you assume that I didn't have a father? But simple, just it was death by 1,000 cuts. And that goes into what like black people experience and what that does to the black psyche and that level of self-hate that black people feel. That's why last year was so powerful for me. It was because there was a level of black love that I felt, and that I really started to soak in, and that I feel today. I love my blackness. I don't want to be anything else but me. I don't want to be anything else but black as fuck. I love it. But yeah, so in this time I'm doing these science experiments with my body, experimenting with drugs, and experimenting with drugs, dealing with this racist shit, doing gay shit with my friends, and then finally being sexually active with women. I had girlfriends in junior high school. Still talk to some of them today. They're super tight. Like a lot of them are super cool. A lot of these people I made amends to. All these people I'm speaking about right now, I made amends to, because I want peace. I want peace. You can harm me, but I elevate. I try to elevate my life today, and no evil done against me is going to stop me from having my peace. That's all I want. I'll sacrifice my pride for peace. That's bars right there. That's bars right there. Yeah, so the science experiment goes on. My brother is 5 years older than me. He's my hero. Still is my hero. He's actually coming out to San Diego in the next couple of days. By the time this comes out, he'll be here. I'm excited. And he was just with me and my family, my partner, and my 2 kids. He was just with us this weekend as well. He's out in California after he suspended his election. Me and him had this adversarial relationship growing up because he was so righteous. Not righteous in the sense that he would be self-righteous. He still is. That's one of his character defects. But he's wise. And I knew that I didn't want to be like him. I wanted to be my own thing. And when I was 13, and the big pivotal point was when I was 13, he went off to college. And that's when I started seeking male guidance. My dad worked 2 18-hour shifts and 1 10-hour shift 3 days a week, and slept a lot, so we could have the life that we had. Never a shortage of money, never wondering how we were going to do anything, never, all the vacations, all the traveling, been to almost every state in the United States, eaten all kinds of animal meat and, fought in national championships and just had a great childhood, But doing these science experiments, my brother went away to college, and finding these male relationships, there's a lot of toxicity there. I do attribute a lot of my toxicity to these unhealthy male relationships because many of us just didn't have healthy role models. And as I'm doing this, the people I'm hanging out with are getting worse and worse. There are more people who are doing these experiments with their body. By this time, I'm in a different neighborhood in Queens, finding a group of friends. It's probably 16. By the time I turned 16, my brother turned 21, so I stole his ID, and I'm in New York City nightlife now. I got to see before New York City nightlife died. People don't know if you heard of Sound Factory. I know you probably have. Matt, I'm talking to Matt, because he's in the music scene. Sound Factory is one of the most famous techno electronic music hubs on the East Coast, because electronic music's from Detroit, but Sound Factory was like cocaine and like techno, and it was really a big deal. And they turned it into Pacha. They turned this place called Pacha, and Pacha had interesting hours. Pacha had from 10 to 4 where they served alcohol, because New York City you could serve alcohol till 4 a.m. So they had 10 to 4 served alcohol. At 4 a.m. you can come in at under 18 because they're not serving alcohol, and they were open until 12 or 1 the next day. So at this point, I'm a drug addict. I'm not a drinker. I did drink, and I'm definitely an alcoholic because I have lots of stories, and I'll get into some of them where alcohol just ruined my life. But by this time, I'm fully enthralled in NYC New York City nightlife, going to Pacha multiple times a week, going to other clubs, Bellagio, Mims, This Is Why I'm Hot will forever be a track in my life, because when he came out, we went and saw him, and We Fly High was that Jim Jones song, We Fly High, No Lie. That one, that was a big song at the time. So yeah, but this is the ecstasy phases and the cocaine phases. This is I did ecstasy. I would do ecstasy every day if I could, and I attribute this to a lot of the neurological problems I have today. because it's all different bath salts and different research chemicals, as well as a little bit of MDMA. I think I got in there before they really ruined ecstasy and before it went to Molly. They had these Superman pills, the stars, the fucking all these different ecstasy pills. I lost my virginity around this time. I lost my virginity at 16 to a woman for the first time. So I lost my virginity for the first time around this time on ecstasy. Didn't know what I was doing. Lied about when I lost my virginity, because of course 16 is kind of late, right? Like, but I was the only black kid, and like a lot of white girls didn't like black dudes. San Diego's very different. San Diego white girls love black dudes, but where I'm from, there was a lot of racism, Black dudes were looked at as X, Y, and Z. See, New York City, they say, is a melting pot, but really what New York City is, this comedian says, it's a melting pot where pots of the same kind hang out with pots like other pots. And the neighborhoods are like, these pots are here, and these pots are here, these pots are here. And on the train, you melt. But like you go back to your Greek neighborhood, or you go back to your black neighborhood, or you go back to your Italian neighborhood. That's how New York is built up. So anyway, these drugs, I was seeking the same thing that I've always wanted, and I still want today, is companionship and friendship. And ecstasy by this time makes you feel that way. It makes you feel love. You know what I mean? It makes you feel like your community. It's a deep sense of love that you feel, and a deep sense of intimacy that you feel that I never felt before, and got very addicted to ecstasy. Very addicted to ecstasy. And bounced around neighborhood because I'm already this mentally unstable person. And me, a bipolar person on ecstasy, is out of control. Anyway, so I did this ecstasy, and this is when the coke started to talk myself into a lot of trouble, because I'm a chatty Cathy already. I look at chat right now. Imagine me on coke. It was fucking, I'm so embarrassed of that. Just talked so much shit. So embarrassing. Had girlfriends throughout this time, was shitty to them, just was a shitty person. I'm still, I'm not still shitty, but I just never learned how to love a woman. Still don't know how, still learning. Never learned how to love anybody. Still learning, It's just I don't, I as I said in the last podcast, I've been in sexual relationships since I was 6. I don't know what love is. I don't know what, intimacy is. Besides the intimacy of my mom, but my mom and I have a hella codependent relationship, which was nurtured by this whole time. But by this time already, I'm in therapy and in substance abuse things. Long Island Consultation Center is where I went. Shout out to them, because they tried. And I was lying to them, just couldn't stop doing drugs. But my parents were already noticing the mental instability, which is the bipolar disorder coupled with the mental health struggles. And there's suicide attempts happening within this time. There's violence going on within this time. There's violence in my household going on within this time. Fights with my father where I tried to hurt him, and fights with my mom where I would cuss her out and call her names. That's why I always talk about my addiction has ravaged my family, but it was also mental illness. I was sick. I was a very sick person. Anyway, so made my way, drugs are littering my life, and ruining my life slowly and progressively. By the time I was 18 or 19, obviously I had a different friend group, still semi-racist, dealt with hella racist shit from their parents. I don't know why I couldn't get away from these white people. I wanted to be white so bad, because everybody else around me was white, and they just got along. They had this natural thing. But again, something was the same, something was different, and that different thing was me. And that was what I was used to. And I hated myself at this point. So I would deal with any abuse to feel connected. I would deal with any level of abuse to feel connected, whether it was real or not. That's why I have a general mistrust of white people. I did a whole podcast where white people taught me. My parents didn't teach me that white people were bad. Never. They never told me that. I'm looking at Matt. They were never like, don't trust. They said that, but they were never like, fuck white people. They never said that. My grandmother grew up, she's 85 years old, never heard her say one bad thing about white people, But white people taught me what they think of black people and what they thought of me. So that's an interesting. It's like James Baldwin said, the real question of the race problem in America, the real question of the race problem in America never be solved if we have to ask, why did you need niggas anyway? Why did you need the invention of a nigger anyway? Why did you need the separation of human anyway? It's interesting. That's the big question. We want to deal with the race problem. Let's ask that question. Why we even need a separation? What is it about us? But anyway, I digress. But yeah, dealing with all this race stuff, addictions leading up. By this time, I'm drinking this whole time too. When I drink, I'm violent. That's another reason I stay sober, is because it's not like I drink and like hide in my room. No, I drink and I take victims. I have victims. You know, I'm a physically abusive person. I punch anybody in the face or hurt anybody. That's a big reason. And I talk about, you know, that's why I have a lot of Mike Tyson stuff in the house. I have Mike Tyson, you know, behind the camera, and I have Mike Tyson over here to my left. And what I love about Mike Tyson is that he was a drug addict and he was a violent person. He thrived off violence. Being a weak feeling, he'll notably say he was a weak person, and he thrived off violence because it made him feel power. And violence made me feel power. And, it fed that ego. And now I do so much to fight my ego as an adult person because I know where it leads me. It leads me to violence where I hurt anybody. And throughout my whole addiction, I would physically harm anybody who was around me. But anyway, let's start speeding it up. By the time I was 19, found opiates, and I felt I finally arrived. I said, this is the fucking ticket. And, did Oxycontin, sold Oxycontin, sold Oxycontin 30s, Oxycodone 30s, Oxycodone hydrochloride, the M's, the blueberries, whatever you want to fucking call them, sold all of them, and traveled up and down the Northeast. Me and Dylan lived in Vermont, lived in Albany, selling drugs. I was on that story we talked about Vinny. I was on bail selling coke. That's the kind of guy I was like. They're like $100,000 bail. Okay, cool. You gonna let me out? I'm gonna sell coke while I'm out. Could have went to prison for 10 years if I got fucked up doing that shit. But yeah, got caught up in the opiate epidemic, the prescription pills that many of us did. And that's when my life started going down. My friends started dying. Christian died in 2009. Christian died right before his 19th birthday. My birthday was right after his, a couple weeks after his. He passed away, and I did Oxy at his funeral. I went into the bathroom and did Oxy at his funeral. Drove down from Vermont and did dope at his funeral. And watched everybody cry in front of his mom's face. The real tragedy of addiction is not for the drug addict. The drug addict's trying to check out. The drug addict's surviving. But the real tragedy is for the moms. My mom, I tortured her, not knowing what. Some days she would get a call and I'd be in the hospital, my face beaten down. Some days I get in the hospital, belligerent drunk. Some days I wouldn't come home at all. Like I told that story with Vinny, because I was in jail for 3 days and she had no idea where I was. The torture of the parents, and I watched people cry in front of Chris's mom's face, and I was like, how dare you? How dare you cry in this woman's face, who really lost her first son. Her son, how are we doing on time? 28. Beautiful. So my opiate addiction brought me to every dark place you can go. Jails, institutions, and death. I would OD on a regular basis. I was losing friends. Me and Dylan split our friendship. Dylan and I live together now. We're both sober after 11 years of friendship, which is a beautiful thing. It's a fucking miracle. That's a miracle. That's a miracle I get to see every day. That's not a fucking pretend miracle. I get to see it every day. But it eventually led me to heroin addiction and an abusive relationship where I was the abuser. To a woman, that didn't deserve that. And I'll say that honestly. I'm not, when I speak from a place of healing, I'm not speaking from a place of motherfucker who does not know what it's like to be toxic. I know toxicity well, and I know healing well, because that's simply not the person I am anymore. So when I say you could design your life, when that's the message, you could design your fucking life. I've designed my life, and I'm truly transformed. I'm truly a different person. The things I did in my past, this story I'm telling is almost like I'm telling somebody else's story. It's almost like this isn't even me. But yeah, I got sober shortly thereafter. After jails, institutions, and death, I got to experience all those things. Almost went to prison for a long time. Spent time in and out of psych wards due to my bipolar disorder. I explained that is part of my life. That's why I say shout out to Grippy Socks because I spent a lot of time with no shoelaces and grippy socks and hospital gowns. Spent time in psych wards and watched a lot of people die. Manny, Nicholas, Chris, Corey, fucking who else? There's so many I can't even name them. Ashley, so many I just can't even name them. Justin, like it's so many. Terrence, there's just so much death that I experienced. I can't even name all of them. Got to experience all that, and I got sober shortly thereafter, and went to rehab and did everything suggested. But I don't say when I talk about my recovery, I'm very serious to say that I didn't do it right. I felt like a fraud in recovery for a long time. Been on all sorts of medication. That really, I say that my story of recovery is more so about the healing my mental health and getting plugged in with my mental health than it even is about recovering from drugs and alcohol. I had an opportunity. I was finally clear enough to find the medications that were going to work for me. And I've been on that journey ever since, and it's still a journey. Medications still adjust, I still change them. Got to take that journey and was a liar, cheater, and thief well into my recovery. Cheated on my partner. I told you about my sex addiction. I'm very open about that. And, just got to experience a lot, man. But when I talk about transformation, I'm not speaking from a place of not knowing what it's like to be a different person. I'm not speaking from a place of not knowing. Like, I see coaches who don't know any adversity. They know mental adversity. They know mental bondage that they put themselves in, but they don't know they don't know what it's like coming from the mud. They don't know what it's like coming from the mud. And it's not like I came from the mud and I'm just doing a little bit better. I came from the mud and I completely designed my life. I completely redesigned my life. All things, and I talk about God so much because this is not my own doing. I couldn't do anything on my own. I couldn't exist on my own. I don't know how to live. God teaches me how to live. I learned how to live through meditation. I learned how to live through men who come before me. And I do a lot of personal development. And this podcast was founding on all the healing that I was doing years ago in order to be a better person. Meditation workshops, acupuncture, all the Chinese medicines, everything humanly possible besides psychedelics, which I'm going to be honest with you, I may try psychedelics. I may try ayahuasca in my recovery, which some people won't agree with. But if there's an avenue for conscious contact with God, I'm willing to take it. I'm willing to take it, even though it would be I'd get 12-step canceled. But I'm more committed to spiritual growth than I am to what the judgments of others of me. And if I did do it, I wouldn't tell you motherfuckers anyway. I wouldn't keep that shit to myself. But yeah, so that's the story, man. And that's why so much Mike Tyson's in my life, because that's a redemption story. Mike Tyson is a convicted rapist, a violent criminal, harmed people, loved harming people. They found power in harming people, drug addict, and has transformed his life, to this wise, sweet person we know today, or that I know today, that I get to hear and listen to. Maybe you don't listen to him, but he's just wise and brilliant. And I regard myself as someone who's gone through the mud, gone through all the violence, gone through all the jails, institutions, and death, and come out on the other side as a transformed human being, simply a different human being. And I'm grateful for that. And I've gotten to take, when we talk about personal responsibility, that we've done whole podcasts on that, foundational principle in my life. I've gotten to look almost all of the people I harmed throughout my life, and I harmed a lot of people. I got to send them an email, a DM, a phone call, any way I can reach out to them. Sometimes they don't even respond. Sometimes the best amends you could do is leaving someone the fuck alone. And I made amends to people and took responsibility. Didn't make amends and explain as to why I did it. Didn't do any of that. I made amends and said, I did these things. They were wrong. I knew they were wrong, and I did them anyway. And I know nothing worthwhile will come from this if I don't take responsibility for this. So if there's anything I could do to make it right, and when they don't answer, and one thing I could do to make it right is to be a good father. One thing I could do to make it right is the work that I do. So the work that I do is not just my job. It's not just what pays the bills. The work that I do is a living amends every day with every client, with every person, to be of service to somebody else. I have alcoholics in and out of my house, right before this podcast, so I can keep my soul clean. I want a clean soul. I want peace. I want peace more than I want anything else. I want peace more than I want money. I want peace more than I want you to even listen to this. But yeah, I just wanted to tell my story because we hear all these perspectives that I come from. We hear all these experiences that I come from. Like, we heard me talk about race ad nauseum last year. We hear me talk about recovery ad nauseum. We hear me talk about sex addiction ad nauseum. We hear me talk about violence ad nauseum. And I just want you to know that I know this stuff intimately, and I know transformation intimately. How are we doing on time? Boom. And we're finishing up. So if you're interested in working with someone who knows transformation, and you want to transform your life no matter your circumstances, you can find me and reach out to me at bigmoodcoach.com. We're rebranding the whole thing, so try out the transformational mentorship, where I work with you closely, weekly, sometimes multiple times a week if need be, in order to get you from where you are to where you deserve to be. Also I do the, fitness and healthy lifestyle coaching. That's not to be honest with you, it's not what I love to do anymore. It's what I do. It's what I do because people need it, and my job is to meet people's needs. But it's more than just being a beast. I deadlift 500 pounds. Cool. I bench 300 pounds. Tight. I squat 300 pounds. Cool. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty cool, right? Like, it's cool to be a beast, but I don't give a fuck about it. I don't give a fuck about that. I give a fuck about people being healthy human beings. I give a fuck about people being healthy human beings, but really it's a transformational mentorship where we get to stretch you, we get to challenge you, and we get to know you. We know each other intimately. And work with someone who really knows what it's like to live one way and to transform and live another way. So if you listen to this whole podcast all the way through, I want you to rate this podcast, share it, subscribe. I want you to watch it on YouTube. We appreciate you. I just want to connect with you, and I want you to know me. You hear me speak about things in general, in kind of a general form, but I want you to know me. I want you to know I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Generally. Sometimes I have no fucking clue what I'm talking about, which is fine. It's okay to be wrong. But yeah, just go off script today and tell my story. So if you listened, I appreciate you. I love you. Mandy, I know you listened to the whole thing. Shout out to you. We're out of here. Peace.